This video is the reassembly of the HP G4 11-inch Education Edition. This will start with reinstalling the LCD back into the upper clamp. The LCD does have a push-type connector. What you're going to do with this is you're going to take the tab that's hooked to the push-type connector and you're going to fold it back. And you're going to gently push this connector back into its socket. Once it's pushed in, you're going to take this tab, it has adhesive on the back, and you're going to fold it back onto the LCD and just adhere it down to the LCD. This will prevent the LCD from coming unplugged during use and creating odd distortions in the video. Once you have this connected, you can go ahead and flip the LCD back into its socket in the upper clamp. Make sure it lines up with all 4 holes. At this point, you can go ahead and reinstall the 4 screws that hold the LCD down. When you are screwing in a screw, it generally helps to put the screw in its place and then turn backward until you feel it click, and then turn it forward. This just makes sure that your threads are lined up properly and that you do not cross thread a screw. If you do cross thread a screw, the screw will not go in all the way and it will affect the final product. And that is how you reinstall your LCD. Once your LCD is firmly in place and secure, you're going to reinstall your LCD bezel. To do this, just line up the LCD bezel with the edge of the upper clamp. Make sure that your 2 cables are not snagged, and just push down softly. You're going to hear clicks. These clicks are the clips on the LCD bezel clipping back into place. You're just going to walk all the way around this. Some of them will be a little bit harder than others. Once you're clicked all the way in, all the way around, you're going to reinstall your 2 screws in the bottom right and bottom left hand corners. Again, it helps to kind of turn backward a little bit before you start putting the screw in. It just helps to line up the screws to the holes. Once the screws are in, you're ready to take the covers and put them back in place. Just line these up over the plastic and press down. These will go on just like tape. Now, these covers may stick to your mat. Just use your ISSMO to get up underneath them, just like you do to remove them from the LCD bezel. And that is how you put your LCD bezel back on. Once your upper assembly is completely reassembled, that is the upper clamp, the LCD assembly, and the LCD bezel, you are ready to reinstall your lower clamp. In order to do this, you're going to take your hinges and turn them upwards at a 90-degree angle. And you're going to line up your hinges with their mounts and just slide them into place. Now once these are in, you can lay your screen down and pull your hinges back down to a flat alignment, and this will help you locate them into the places where they need to go. Once you have them located back into those places, you can put in the 2 screws. These screws are indicated by the triangles next to the holes. Go ahead and put them into those holes. These indicate mount points. And just make sure you get these nice and tight. If these do come loose, it can cause issues with the computer down the road. And once you have those nice and tight, you're ready to reroute your Wi-Fi cable and your LCD cable. I have found it is best to start with the LCD cable, just because it is on the back side of the computer. So you're just going to bring it up underneath the clips all the way across the computer to here. Okay. Same thing with your Wi-Fi antenna, underneath all of the clips. And there are 2 cables on this, so make sure they both go under the clips. Otherwise they can become misaligned. And just make sure this goes underneath the LCD connector. And down into it. Vinyl clip is kind of hard, just kind of push it down in. Okay. And that is how you re-adhere your LCD assembly to the lower case. Once you have your LCD assembly re-adhered back onto your lower case, it is time to install your speaker assembly. In order to do this, go ahead and thread your cable back under the hooks in the center of the computer. Make sure you do that first so you can get the right tension. And it will pretty much sit back in the place it needs to be in. Just push this down until you hear a click. Now that is seated into place, so at this point you're going to reroute the cable to the motherboard. And there are hooks that this does need to go under. It's going to go around this screw mount and back under this hook, and that's the last hook you're going to put it under. So there are 2 on the right side, round that screw hole, and then underneath that last hook. And that is how you reinstall your speaker assembly. Once your speaker assembly has been reinstalled, you're ready to put back in your DC jack. This is fairly simple. What you're going to do, you're going to make sure the cable is coming out of the bottom of the DC jack. You're going to set it down in its well, and you're just going to push, and it's going to click back into place. Now you need to reroute this cable up underneath this hook, through this valley, under this hook, through this valley, and that is set. Once you've installed your DC jack, you are ready to install your card reader. This is done by slowly sliding the card reader underneath this hook right here towards the edge of the computer. Once it's in place, you'll have little locator pins actually going through the board that will keep it in its place. And then you're going to put the 2 screws back into the 2 corners of this board. These screw holes are indicated by white triangles on either of these holes. These do indicate mount points. Anytime you see a white triangle, it indicates a mount point. Once you've installed your DC jack, you are ready to install your card reader. This is done by slowly sliding the card reader underneath this hook right here towards the edge of the computer. Once it's in place, you'll have little locator pins actually going through the board that will keep it in its place. And then you're going to put the 2 screws back into the 2 corners of this board. These screw holes are indicated by white triangles on either of these holes. These do indicate mount points. Anytime you see a white triangle, it indicates a mount point. Once your card reader is installed, you are ready to reinstall your motherboard. In order to do this, you're going to take your motherboard by the left side. You're going to lean it down into the USB and HDMI ports at an angle. You're then going to lay the board down while pulling the cables out from underneath the computer. If they do get stuck, you will not be able to hook them up later. Once it is seated in its position, you're going to reinsert the 4 screws, 3 of one size, go in the bottom right, top right, and left center holes. And the 4th of a different size will go into the central hole with the ground points on it. Once you have all your screws in place, you are ready to reinsert all of your cables. Starting with the USB daughter board, you're going to slowly insert that. This black line on this cable should line up with the clip when you close the clip. The speaker assembly, this is just a push type connector. You're going to line it up and just push in firmly. The DC Jack, again, this is a push type connector. You're going to line it up. This one could be a little difficult. And push firmly. And then your LCD connector is a clip type connector. You're going to push this in. It's going to have two locators on either side so it can't pull backwards. You're going to push this alligator connector down. Once you have your motherboard reinstalled into the lower case, it's time to install the Wi-Fi card. To do this, grasp the Wi-Fi card by the edge and firmly insert it into the socket. You're going to take the single screw and reinstall that. This is what holds the Wi-Fi card down. And once you're done with this, you're going to be reattaching these two coaxial connectors. These are somewhat difficult to get reinstalled. Always remember, auxiliary is always 2 and main is 1. These are labeled on the board as well as on the cables. In order to reinstall these, go ahead and line up the coaxial connector over the circle on the board. And I find it's easiest to push down with the screwdriver because it does have a little bit of spring to it. It's really hard to do this if you just try and do it with your fingers. And that's how you reinstall your Wi-Fi antennas. Once you have your Wi-Fi antenna reinstalled into the computer, it's time to reinstall your battery. In order to do this, you're going to grab the battery by the front of the battery and put it in at an angle towards the front of the computer. You're then going to set it down and push down here and here. This will clip the two clips back under. Once you're done with that, you're going to take your two screws and reinstall them in the two edges. Once you're done with this, you can reconnect the battery. Always be careful once your battery is connected, as if you touch the board with any metal, you can short out the board. And that's how you reinstall your battery. Once you've installed your battery, it is time to reinstall your keyboard bezel. The first thing you need to reinstall when reinstalling your keyboard bezel is the keyboard connector and the trackpad connector. These are done using alligator clips, as we disconnected earlier. You're just going to slide in the connector into the alligator clip. And you'll know it's far enough in because the black line on the connector will line up with the edge of the clip. On the keyboard, the two ears on the edge will actually locate into sockets on the ends of this socket. Then you'll just pull that down. Once you have those in place, go ahead and position your keyboard bezel over top of the lower case in its socket and push down. Make sure you do this all the way around, as there are clips even in the middle of the computer. And that is how you reinstall your keyboard and keyboard bezel. Once your keyboard bezel is installed, you are ready to close your computer, flip it over to the bottom side, and reinstall the lowercase screws. Remember, with screws, it's always easier to give it a little bit of a turn backward just to line up the screw, just till you feel it click. That way you don't cross thread the screw. When you do cross thread it, it makes it much harder to put in, as well as it can damage your final product. That being said, you won't have to do this method every time. It just does help. That is your lowercase screws. The final step in the reassembly of the G4 is to reinstall these screw covers. On these screw covers there is a notch cut into the back of them. There is a notch in each of these holes. That notch will need to be lined up, as this is how you line up the angle of the cover. These are just adhesive. As soon as you put them into place, they should re-adhere back into place. And that is your finished HP G4 11-inch Education Edition.